Growing concerns from NATO that the war in Ukraine will move past its border. The G7 pledges aid to Ukraine and the Brittany Griner prisoner swap. To break down the latest developments, let's talk to Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Great to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Jan. Always good to see you.
You as well. I want to begin with the Brittany Griner Victor Boot prisoner swap. Boot convicted of supporting terrorists and conspiracy to kill Americans. Meantime, we still have a U.S. Marine imprisoned in Russia. Considering what we gave up for Griner's release, what would it take to bring home Paul Whelan? And what are the risks to national security with the Victor Boot release?
You know, that's really the question that everybody's asking right now is what's it going to take to get Paul Whelan home? Because he's been held captive for a long time now. And, and obviously everybody's very happy that Brittany Griner was returned to the United States. But there is the question of why did Paul Whelan not get included in that package? And what is it going to take? I mean, what are we going to have to give up? Because unfortunately, it's pretty clear that, without some kind of a quid pro quo, Russia's not just going to hand Paul Whelan over. And that's always the thorniest and most difficult for any administration to have to discuss of what would they be willing to give up to get back a U.S. Citizen like this. But I think that it's important for the United States to say, hey, we don't leave anybody behind, whether it's a soldier or a citizen that's been taken captive. We've got to find some way to find that we may have some leverage on Russia that can get him released. And I hope that the president will start using maybe even some unconventional ways to find some other leverage points to get him released.
Colonel, what are the risks to national security with the Victor Boot release?
I honestly don't think there's anything different than any other day. I don't think it's worse today than it was before he was released, because we've kept constantly, unfortunately, a lot of people that would like to do harm to the U.S. Definitely in the area of arms deals, there's lots of bad guys, bad actors out there, but we're constantly on alert to that. And we have a pretty robust capability, especially since 9/11. We've improved a lot of our systems, and I think that we're comparatively safe. And I don't think it's any worse today than it was. It's just something we have a constant vigilance on.
Dozens of countries and international organizations threw their weight and more than €1 billion in aid pledges behind an urgent new push Tuesday to keep Ukraine powered, fed, warm, and really moving amid the onset of winter. The U.S. has already given billions of dollars in aid and weapons to Ukraine. Isn't it past time, Colonel, don't you think, for European leaders to lead the way in aiding this war?
Well, it definitely is. It's way beyond that. And look, everybody gets that we want to help Ukraine as much as they can, especially with this extremely painful strike against their energy infrastructure that is leaving millions of Ukrainians in the cold when temperatures are below freezing already. And it's only going to get worse as December continues into January. But it's also important that those who are closest to Ukraine, who have the most, at risk of what's going on over there, should be carrying the lion's share of this. But unfortunately, from the outset, the United States continues to shoulder much, much more of it. We're talking like 5 and 6 times more than the cumulative European nations. And that should not be the case. The United States should help when it can, but it can't be our primary responsibility. In other words, the security of Europe can't be more important to the U.S. than it is to Europe. And I think that we really need to start insisting that the European Union pick up its share of this. And look, the only way that's going to happen is if we say, hey, we're going to limit what we have, and we're going to have the Europeans pick it up. Because I'm just telling you, the truth is, if we don't, they're going to be content with us continuing to pick up the lion's share.
I've got about 30 seconds. On Friday, the head of NATO warned that fighting in Ukraine could spin out of control and become a war between Russia and NATO. President Putin even suggested Moscow could carry out a preemptive strike. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that Putin's comments there are just bluster because, he knows that he can't launch a preemptive strike against NATO without being utterly destroyed. He knows that. But this does show that he's very, very scared about in a war with NATO and very serious about it. And I think that we have to be much more careful about how involved we get, how much we go to defend Ukraine, that we absolutely cannot risk a conflict with Russia because it's not in our interest. Our security is not threatened by what's going on in Ukraine, and we dare not get into a war that could ultimately result in a nuclear exchange.
Yeah, retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, always great to have you on and get your expertise.
Thanks, Jan.